Hello everyone and welcome back to Abundantly Minimal. My name is Sarah and today we have another travel inspired video all about how our minimalist approach to travel has changed over the years and what has stayed the same. This is definitely a topic on my mind a lot as we just came home from a month-long road trip to more of the western parts of the United States and a little bit to Canada. And we had a lovely time in all of those places. But I was reflecting about since we started traveling when we did our belated honeymoon back in 2015 to now, a lot has changed. Obviously, some general things in travel have changed as the tourism industry has, kind of gone up and down as different new offerings are available, but also with pandemic-related factors. So I'm sure that will kind of creep its way in my answers a little bit. But a lot of these are just other choices we've made to travel more intentionally and maximize our enjoyment, maybe minimize costs as well. And it's ultimately, I feel like we've really narrowed down our travel style and figured out what our best approach is. It's going to look different for everyone, of course, but I think that makes it easier for us to take these different pieces and some of these changes and put them into effect for future trips. Also, some of these are, I will say, a bit of a contradiction to some of my earlier travel videos, and my thoughts have changed and I'll explain why. These are in no particular order, but some of the more interesting topics are coming up first here. So the first question, do I still travel with a backpack? I know in earlier videos I was showing our backpacks that we travel with and how we were able to fit it all in the backpack. And the answer still is yes, we do use the backpack to travel. However, I will say something, a piece of nuance or an added detail, I think, maybe that's a clarification. We don't necessarily just have the backpack, especially with our road trips recently. Something we realized that's changed is that previously we were always only traveling in the summer. Jake and I were both teaching, and so we had our summers off. So that was when we traveled. And where we were going, it was always warm. Warm clothes are just a lot easier to pack and take up less room than colder, like weather clothing and warmer clothing. But the way we travel now, we try to avoid summer because that's generally peak times in a lot of places. Some places are also much more unbearably hot in the summer compared to spring or fall. So I would say my clarification is, especially when we are traveling not in summer anymore, it has been helpful to bring some additional bags and reserve items. So for instance, on this road trip that we were just on, we did have the backpack and that was our main thing. But in the trunk of the car, we each had a spare bag that had warm clothing. Fortunately, or unfortunately with climate change, the weather was pretty warm throughout the trip. So we only had to dip into that spare reserve warm clothing a few times, but it just takes up more space when you're bringing multiple different jackets for different temperatures. And we also did buy hiking boots for the first time, which really increased the quality of our experience, but also does not fit in the backpack. So while I'm still very much team backpack, especially with international flights, if you're kind of, traveling between lots of different cities, I think I'm realizing the limitations for winter or colder weather travel, and if you have more specialized equipment, like even just hiking boots compared to regular everyday sneakers that you could wear, all throughout. So that would be my changed answer. And especially as we are going to Antarctica in this next year, I realize we will probably actually needing to buy a suitcase that will fit more of these warmer clothing items that we're bringing. The second way our minimalist travel style has changed is our use of Airbnb. Now, in past videos, I was very much team Airbnb. I loved using them. We were able to save a lot of money through using them and went to a lot of really cool places, got to meet a lot of cool people that we were staying with. But honestly, we don't use Airbnb anymore. Now, there's lots of different layers we can get into this. I mean, for me, I think the main part of it is actually cost, ironically. I think this is not anyone's fault per se. I think these kind of things just happen as a platform grows and becomes more popular and changes. But it's not really the same kind of atmosphere as it was when we started traveling before. When we were traveling much earlier, it was still a newer thing, and so we were in general often staying in a private room in someone's home, and they were making that space available, and it was a really cool way to get to know them. Obviously, though, not everyone wants to share a home with other people, and so just as a business strategy, many people, in different parts of the country or the world have been buying up property and converting it into single spaces for Airbnb, so you're not sharing with anyone. There's not that same local connection, and it also has created some issues with having affordable housing options or driving up the cost of housing in many of these different locations. And that is definitely an unfortunate side effect of this tourism industry. The other layer is just, frankly, the costs are higher than hotels, at least in experiences when I've been looking. I think one of the biggest layers to that is cleaning fees. So when you book a hotel, you're paying for the cost of the hotel, and you don't have to necessarily worry about an added on cleaning fee for just like everyday stuff. But what we are noticing is that even for a short, let's say 2-night stay in maybe the size of a regular apartment or condo, there might be an extra $100 cleaning fee or a $75 cleaning fee. And again, it's not blaming any group. I think something that I've noticed that has happened, it's interesting. Review culture can be challenging when people are leaving, awful reviews for things. If you look at a hotel website reviews, people are vicious on there. And I'm guessing that some of that same hotel review culture, vicious review culture, has been for Airbnbs as well. And I'm guessing the hosts of those, it feels much more personal if someone's, reviewing your home in a harsh way and be like, I found a piece of hair, or, whatever crazy stuff people leave in reviews. And so I'm guessing that has in turn led many to double down more on cleaning, in addition to pandemic-related cleaning that someone might be doing. But I feel like the effects of all of that have just led costs to increase. And I also think, too, if you're to go to the Airbnb homepage at this point, what they're promoting is more so those, I don't want to say extreme stays, but it's very unique experiences that aren't really traditional places of lodging anymore, which I think there's certainly a time and a place. It can be fun. Like, we stayed in a tiny house before, which was very interesting. I learned it wasn't for me. I kind of knew that going into it, but I feel like these reasons altogether are major reasons I'm no longer traveling with Airbnb. And it's been a few years since I made my video talking about the perks. I still think there could be a time and a place. Obviously, it's all situational. We did last year stay at a few, and we were able to stay on this apple orchard, which was really fun and a lovely stay. So there's certainly still elements where that's very cool, but they're not my first choice at all. And in this last trip, we didn't even look much at their site. So it's just something we're no longer really doing. Related to that, there's also another reason we don't travel with Airbnb anymore, and that is because of travel hacking. I know if you've been watching my videos recently, you've heard me talk about it probably every other video, but it has become a huge passion of mine and is giving us travel opportunities that we would not otherwise have, which has been incredibly exciting. Jake made a comment a couple weeks ago saying that travel hacking is kind of perfect for me because it combines 3 of my greatest passions and loves in life, which is traveling, saving money, and strategy, all in one, because you combine your love of travel, since you are booking travel and able to book more travel through travel hacking, saving a lot of money, getting things for free, and using strategy to figure out what will be the best use of our points and how we can get more travel with the points that we have. So it's certainly been a beautiful thing. I do wish I had discovered it sooner, but it's better late than never. And we are really looking forward to travel opportunities this next year, where we're going to get free travel and be able to explore the world for less than if we had just paid for things out of pocket ourselves. So for us, we've gotten into a good rhythm on that. I find it doesn't really take too much extra time if you've got an idea of the goals that you have for where you'd like to travel and what you'd like that travel to look like. And then it's kind of leveraging the different travel cards that we're using to be able to make the biggest impact. So I think that's been very exciting to see play out. So if you are interested in travel hacking or you want to learn more about it, I'll have a link to one of my charts below where I was comparing all these details, as well as my video I did, which was a more in-depth walkthrough. The way we structure our days has changed a lot while traveling. I think in the early stages, I was trying to maximize things. So if there was, that must-see site, or if we wanted to go to all 3 of these restaurants, I would make it happen, in a much more condensed setup. But I think now I've chilled out a bit. I acknowledge that just the way the travel happens or how life plays out, you're probably not going to get to do all the cool things that you want to. Maybe you'll not have time to do certain museum exhibits or, cool cultural sites, or even going to a really cool restaurant that you've heard good things about if, you don't want to overpack your days. And I think we did a good job with this most recent trip of not pushing ourselves too much and saying, yeah, you know what, this is just the natural amount that someone would do in a day. And we can be much more low key during those other hours so we can maximize our time at these sites or make the choices that are the most strategic for us having a good time. And of course, you can always visit some of these areas again if there are things that you missed out on that you feel like you want to go see. But also, it generally hasn't been something we've been concerned about. It's better to have, I think, a more relaxed pace and maximize the very best things that you want to do. And that's most interesting. Our approach to souvenirs has also changed a little bit. Generally, before we had a pretty, I don't want to say a hard stance against souvenirs, but it was never something I really cared about too much or, looked into very much. But I will say, especially on our most recent trip, I actually had a lot of fun going to some really cute local businesses or fair trade shops. So we ended up getting a couple different souvenir items. When we were in Banff, Canada, there was like a little art gallery area that we got some beautiful prints that featured like animal designs and Lake Louise. So it was absolutely lovely. And I'm really excited to be able to hang those up. So supporting a local artisan was cool, and it will be beautiful in a future home. We went to a lovely fair trade shop when we were in Washington State, and they had some beautiful artisan products. We ended up getting a beautiful soapstone carving of a couple that we felt like it was kind of like Jake and I. Also discovered in Salem, Oregon, there's a vegan chocolate company, Chomp Chocolate. I had tried their candy while we were there, and I was in love with their like Reese's peanut butter cup equivalent, and it's fair trade chocolate. So that was exciting. That souvenir did not make it home. The chocolate that I bought was consumed on the trip. But there were just a few things like that where it was really fun to be able to purchase a few of these items strategically, and also cool. It wasn't just a generic store where everything's imported from other countries and made to pretend like it's a souvenir local to the area. But these were actual artisan pieces or homemade pieces, and it was cool to be able to support the, local businesses. The 6th thing that has changed for us with traveling, I'm still using different travel blog posts to help me plan the trips, but I'm trying to always have a grain of salt or just have some distance in what they're saying versus what is reality. And I think I can kind of tap into this a little bit from understanding doing YouTube. When you're making content, whether you're a travel blogger or a YouTuber or anything, you're going to be saying things in the most ideal sense. You're trying to provide the most clear, detailed, explanation for something because you want it to work out to people, but it's not necessarily what you would always do. So when people are doing these more idealistic, if someone's doing a morning routine video, do they always do all of those steps? Do they? I have to assume they're not. That's just me. Maybe I'm cynical on that. But I think the same can be true with some of those travel blog posts. When they're saying, the best 1 day or 2 day itinerary for a certain place. Don't get me wrong, I love to look at those to help me see what kind of options are out there, because they might have more of an insider perspective if they've already been there. But I'm not going to fall prey anymore to some of their idealistic things of, all right, you're going to need to start your day at 5 a.m. so you can catch the sunrise, and you're going to go to this spot. I just don't try to, play with those kind of expectation-based tasks, or I'm just personally not very happy if I have to wake up at 5 a.m. So I don't think I'd enjoy my day as much. What if it's cloudy, and you miss the sunrise? So I think that's just an example of where it's important to get inspired by these different things, but know that, I don't necessarily have to do everything they're suggesting. I don't have to go to the must-dos if I don't care about a certain topic. And it's all about figuring out what matters to you while you're traveling. I've said it before here, but Jake and I just aren't really into art museums. We're not going to art museums pretty much ever. But before we realized that about ourselves, we were going to all those art museums that people said were must-dos. And quite frankly, I don't care. So we were both kind of bored and wishing we hadn't actually gone to them when we did. But that's just everyone else. You put us in a history museum and we're going to be there all day. So I think it's an important thing to reflect about someone's interests and structure your trip around that, not just because someone else has said you should do it, or someone says, yeah, that was my favorite place. Look into it without having to stick to it 100%. I've got lighting on, so I'm not sure if you can tell, but definitely, I'm filming this shortly after the time change, and it's already very dark outside, even though it's not 5 p.m. yet. So that's definitely a bummer, but yay for artificial lighting here. Strategy number 7 comes from planning according to temperature. In some of our early trips, we were thinking more of what do we want to do, especially if we were connecting, different countries on the same trip. And some of those states or countries would have a bigger range in temperatures, which meant you had to bring a bigger range of warmer clothing, colder clothing, and that planning can definitely lead to a bulkier bag and bringing more than you ideally need. So it can be very strategic to try to plan your travel where it's going to be a similar temperature control setting so you are able to just pack for that particular type of temperature. So that's something that we've started doing and will probably continue doing, in the future, just to make sure that we don't have to be carrying as much on us at all times. These next tips will be a little bit quicker, but the next one is bringing some basic medical supplies. After having several road trips in a row, or trips in a row where I had to buy Band-Aids or other different essential items while I was traveling, more allergy medication, I just realized it's a lot easier to bring the stuff with you just in case than to deal with it when these situations come up. You never know what's going to happen, so having these extra medical supplies and first aid supplies, I think you won't regret it. Best case scenario, you don't have to use it at all, but if you do need to use it, you'll be glad that you have it already and don't have to go find a new area to get the supplies that you need. It's just easier to have it outright. Another big change we've made is that we're not printing out as much. We are largely using our phones to have our travel reservations and tickets and that sort of things. I think before I used to have a bit of hesitation and a little worry about doing that. Of course, also our earlier trips, we didn't have smartphones either, so we kind of needed to have the printed out items. But at this point, I definitely trust it a lot more. I also trust it more that we always have a portable charger with us, because my fear before was that, well, what if my phone dies while I'm out and about and there's no spot for me to charge it when I need my tickets? But carrying around, we've got a nimble portable charger. It holds 3 full phone charges and it fits in my purse very easily. Having that on hand is so helpful, especially now that my phone's older and will sometimes just drop down to 1% when it feels like it, sometimes multiple times a day. So it's really nice to have that on hand, the charger on hand, and know that I can trust it, that my materials will be there for me. And we haven't had any issues. So it's been nice not needing to print out stuff and carry around a folder of all my bookings, which I did do in 2015, 2016, 2017, and maybe even 2018 or 2019. This last one is a very simple little swap, but I felt very pleased when I realized we could do it. If you're staying at a hotel or a place where they're giving you the little bars of soap, and you don't want to be as wasteful, but you still need to use them. I know we often will bring our own supplies for other things, but just for the bars of soap, we would just use them. You can actually, in many cases, just break the bar of soap in half. And what we do, because at least in the hotels we've stayed at, they give you 2 bars of soap usually, one for the sink and one for in the shower, but you break one in half, and then you keep half of it by the sink and half of it in the shower. It's probably enough soap to last you, at least if you're not staying too long at a place. For us, we're often at a place for 2 or 3 nights. So we were able to use that, and then you could either take that extra bar of soap that's still wrapped up to use at home later, or just leave it there, and then it's not using as many resources and not wasting as much plastic and whatnot. So I think that can be a really simple thing, but once I realized you could do it at most places, there's 1 or 2 stays the bar of soap was shaped in a way that I couldn't break it. But otherwise, it was a nice little easy swap. So anyway, I hope these ideas were helpful for you, especially as you think about future travel that you may be doing over the next year or so, and how you can apply that as more of a minimalist perspective. And it's a way for me to correct or maybe change some of the things I've said in previous travel videos from a few years ago that I'm not actually doing anymore. So if you'd like to see some of our other recent videos, I'll leave them linked here, and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. I'll see you next time. Bye.